They keep telling you how smart they are and how they're going to deliver you victories. And all they ever do is deliver loss after loss after loss.
Boy, do I have a doozy for y'all today, as you could probably tell by the video length. We are going to be going over the entire election day coverage stream by the Young Turks. There's going to be a lot of buildup in this one, but I promise you it will be well worth it by the end. And you're going to want to hear some of the crazy stuff they had to say or predict leading up to the election results. And take note of the stark contrast in the demeanor of Cenk from the beginning of the stream and then by the end whenever he's in full meltdown mode. But without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
All right, look at this. Welcome to the Young Turks election coverage of the 2024 election. Cenk Uygur, Michael Shure, we've got an election spectacular for you guys.
Oh, I cannot wait. And you're right, Cenk. This is bound to be a spectacular live stream. I want you all to see how happy they are right now because it's going to be all downhill from here.
In another sense, go vote. We're in the middle of it right now, right now. So wherever you are, and by the way, don't assume that you don't live in a swing state. And by the way, this time around, you might be thinking, I live in Iowa, it's solidly red. Is it?
Oh no, Cenk fell for the Iowa poll and actually believes it is a swing state now. This is going to be good.
Not only are we not sure, I don't think anyone really knows. I mean, people will say they know. Michael's about to tell you he knows. Okay.
Yeah, he really is. Michael all night is going to be the one to constantly be like, well, actually, Kamala still has a chance to win if she receives like 90% of the rest of the votes to be counted. So I think it's still too early to call.
Yeah, and so I'll give you a nightmare scenario here, so wake you up a little bit in the morning, okay? They could easily win the Senate. Of course, is it possible that the Republicans hold the House? Of course. And if Trump wins, they have everything.
Wow, that would be a total nightmare situation, wouldn't it? It would be a real shame if something like that were to actually happen.
And imagine this squad with the House, the Senate, and the White House. So that's on the line today. Is that if the Democrats have all three houses, it doesn't really matter, they'll barely pass anything. Okay, but if the Republicans have all three, oh boy, watch out. Buckle up, brace for impact.
Buckle up, baby, because change will actually be made for once. Something the American people have been desperately wanting for years now.
I have been leaning Trump. Of course, I despise Trump. I don't want him to win. We're very honest about that. We'll get more into that in a minute. But my intuition's been Trump until 4 days ago. 4 or 5 days ago, about 5 maybe. And still the numbers started to come in for Kamala Harris that were very positive.
Interesting, the numbers. Let me guess, the Iowa poll? I gotta be honest for a second here. I have to thank Jay Ann Seltzer so much for coming out for this wildly off poll. Because without it, the left would have been way more pessimistic leading up to election night. But thanks to her, I get to see their high hopes slowly diminish over the course of the night.
One thing that I will always say about Donald Trump, if I am right, if we are right, is that he ran a terrible campaign.
Yeah, you see, the problem here, Michael, is that you are almost never right and are definitely wrong here. But go on.
He played very, very well to his base, but he didn't need to, right? He needed to expand that base. That base lost him the election in 2020. Yes, he got a lot of votes. He did better than he did in 2016 in terms of raw numbers, but it wasn't enough. We're talking, as if it's all said and done, and I'm speaking in the hypothetical that you and I are both right, Cenk. And I think that Harris is going to win, and I think there are going to be some surprises. I think states are going to be closer.
Wow, could a guy get anything more wrong within the span of 30 seconds like Michael can?
The way that Iowa poll came out the other day makes me think that if you pull that out, if you extrapolate that and put it to the rest of the country, that Kamala Harris is going to win tonight. And I think there will be surprises.
Thank you, Iowa poll. It really has warped the left's minds into thinking they are actually going to win this election. He really thinks that from this one single poll, a huge outlier compared to every other poll in Iowa, might I add, is a sign that the rest of the country is going to vote for Kamala, leading her to a win.
That Iowa poll, of course, got everybody excited. And there's a couple of other data points that get people excited.
Excited is one way to put it. Delusional would be another.
But of Republican women voting for Kamala Harris. And so how much is that going to happen? We don't know. The independent woman is clearer. Independent women in that Iowa poll that we keep talking about, 2-1 in favor of Kamala Harris. And that is an amazing sign for her if that poll is anywhere near accurate, okay? And also senior women, a category that Democrats don't necessarily win, or certainly don't win by these margins. 2-1 in Iowa for Kamala Harris.
Wow, 2-1 in Iowa? I just want this to be a cautionary tale to anyone else that believed in this Iowa poll. Just because it had data you liked doesn't make it any more credible. And then to make that your guiding compass for the rest of the country and how they will vote? Did they really think that every poll across the nation was off by so much because of this one Iowa poll? And if it was correct, Kamala would surely win all the swing states by at least 5 points, right? It's no wonder they thought Kamala actually had a chance of a landslide victory. They're delusional. But let's hear from Michael because he always knows what's going on.
And the other thing is that party switching in this election will almost certainly be it will be more toward Harris's favor. I think you're going to see more Republicans voting for Harris, more independents voting for Harris, than you're going to see people switching parties the other way, Democrats voting for Trump. There will be some. There are registered Democrats who registered a long time ago as Democrats, but have voted Republican for a long time.
Okay, never mind. This guy's been huffing too much of the liberal propaganda and can't think straight anymore.
The behavior of voters this year is you can be a registered Republican and really not like Donald Trump. And you see it happen in 3 voters in New Hampshire. And that means it's going to happen in other places a lot today. And I think that's what has made polling this race very difficult. A lot of people don't, if they're Republicans and they've never voted for a Democrat, have a very hard time even telling a pollster that that's what they're going to do.
Wow, 3 whole voters? Wow, that's a lot of people. We should really extrapolate that to the rest of the country. Surely that makes logical sense.
Guys, we keep focusing on that Iowa poll because Seltzer is a reliable pollster in the past. She's been terrific in Iowa. But she does get some things wrong, of course, as all pollsters do, but she's been more accurate than most.
Yeah, keyword here being was. It's no wonder she retired after this poll.
So, Michael, you're going to fill in the swing states here. So we're going to go one by one.
Oh, this is going to be good. Yes, Michael, with your infinite wisdom, please fill in the swing states for us. Wait a minute, why is Iowa red? Surely that's another swing state, right?
North Carolina, until I see that a Democrat can win in North Carolina, I'm going to put that in Trump's column.
I don't believe it. He actually said something that made sense for once.
All right, let's go down to Georgia.
Then Georgia, I'm going to give to the Democrats.
You're going to give see, this is interesting because the polling seems to indicate that Georgia's red and North Carolina might be blue, but Michael's doing it in reverse.
Everything Michael says or does is in reverse to logic.
Similar to that, until a few days ago, I was thinking that Nevada was going to go to Trump. But the organizing, I spoke to one person at the Culinary Workers Union in Nevada on Friday who said that they're seeing better turnout than they saw in 2020 from their people. So I'm going to give that to Harris. Prove me again that was a blue state last time. Until it makes a real argument for change, I don't see it happening. So I'm going to go blue there.
So you're going blue in Nevada.
Oops, got that one wrong, but I'm sure the rest he'll get right.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, we don't even have to do this incrementally. I think that the Democrat is going to win the 3 Democratic. I think they're going to win all their home games. So.
Oh wow! All right, he's going blue. Wisconsin,
blue,
Michigan,
Wisconsin,
Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
He's putting them all blue. Let's see what the count is once you do that. And Michael's got it all the way up at 292 to 246 for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Ooh, yikes! 3 strikes and you're out, Michael. What do you have to say for yourself?
Hey, here's what I'm going to say. I believe that Florida is going to be a lot closer than is predicted. And if there is any kind of surprise, if North Carolina, for example, is called early and we see that I'm wrong here, that you're right, and that the numbers in North Carolina are swinging that far, that means there's going to be a surprise someplace else in the country. There was a poll in Kansas that was closer than we thought last week. Iowa has had a close poll. There's going to be something, if you see this movement, there's going to be something we're not even talking about now that happens today.
I love how his framing of this statement is so heavily focused on Kamala that he cannot even fathom that a surprise result would be in the favor of Trump.
Okay, so now let's go to my prediction. My official prediction for this race is I don't know. And I'm going to stick with I don't know. It's something that I never, ever say because I just think that we don't have enough information. It's going to come down to unlikely voters. Trump has had an incredible surge in unlikely voters in 2016 and 2020. A, can he replicate it? B, are they still unlikely? Probably not, because they go into the polling at that point, right? But still, he surprised us way too many times to to count him out.
I see Cenk, unlike his co-host, can actually comprehend a world where people think and vote differently than him, and admitted himself that he's still unsure of what will actually happen. But let's see what he predicted.
Then I go to Michigan and Wisconsin, and I say she holds that part of the blue wall. So the numbers lately from there look pretty good. She's got that surge of female voters that everybody's talking about. On Georgia, I've not seen her winning any of the polls. So I'm going to keep Georgia red. I understand Michael's logic on it.
I don't.
That's the one that's flipped blue recently. Nevada. I'm going to go Nevada red. On Pennsylvania, the one I'm most unsure about, I went blue. And this is based on the latest polling, the latest information. I've got North Carolina going blue. So if she picks up those unlikely women voters, she'll win North Carolina and Pennsylvania, I think. Now, you could say, hey, then why wouldn't she win Nevada? Why wouldn't she win Georgia? I don't know. Good points. Right? So yeah. If I knew, I'd tell you.
So Cenk is obviously wrong here, but you can tell he really has no idea what to expect, which is at least a pretty level-headed take. And even though he fell victim to a lot of the misleading polls, he was still questionable about their validity and could never truly count Trump out, as he's a true wild card when it comes to polling and results.
J.D. Vance was in New Hampshire. Donald Trump went to New Mexico. Now you could say, okay, well, hey, they're just campaigning for president, trying to win as many votes as they can. He was at Madison Square Garden, and he was in Coachella, and he was in Denver. Those aren't places where he's going to win. He's getting the popular vote. But New Mexico made no sense to me. So what I did is I looked at it and I thought, that means that they're worried about other things. They're worried in the waning days of this campaign. Their internals are saying, we gotta fish in another pond, because we're not catching fish in whatever pond this is.
Of course, that's where your logic immediately goes to. When in reality, their internal data was probably showing they were doing pretty well in the swing states, and figured, well, why not throw a Hail Mary at New Mexico and see if we can't win that one too?
So then Trump today, the maniac that he is, or yesterday, refers to Nancy Pelosi as the B word. Your number one problem is unlikely women voters getting mad enough at you to show up to vote. And you're going and calling the most successful female legislator, whether we like it or not, in the country, the B word?
Good. If someone called a man out like that and they deserved it, then good. It's a very tribalistic point of view to have that, oh, she's a woman, so don't you dare criticize her because now all the women will vote against you. No, in fact, that would make me only want to vote for him more. To be like, oh, finally someone's calling her out on her antics.
And then he said, he started fantasizing about putting Kamala Harris in the ring with Mike Tyson. Are you nuts? And the answer is yes, of course he's nuts. Right. Of course. Look, guys, the Democrats should be eternally embarrassed that they're not blowing this guy out.
First, yes, you should be embarrassed for being a Democrat. Second, a person in the crowd yelled it and he found it funny, but the left is so uptight that they can't even comprehend a joke. They really should try relaxing a little bit. Stop taking everything so literal and getting offended over every little thing. It's honestly pathetic.
And the number one reason why I'm crossing those fingers is because 4 years with Donald Trump will be utter chaos, anarchy, pilfering, oligarchy amplified on steroids, putting his donors completely in charge of the government. Elon Musk will be in charge of domestic policy. Mary Madelson will be in charge of foreign policy. This is not how it's supposed to work.
RFK Jr. will be in charge of medical and health policy.
I mean, this is madness.
I want you to remember this Cenk mini rant here and how he's worried that whenever Trump becomes president, he's going to appease to his donors and give them positions in the government. Keep that in mind, because he's going to be saying something very similar about Kamala Harris by the end of this thing.
Now, let's bring in Ida Rodriguez. She's a frequent guest host of the Young Turks. She's a terrific comedian.
That last promo was so scary. I was like, I was like, can I vote again?
No, don't.
Please don't.
I'm joking. I'm sorry. I can't even make jokes like that right now.
Just joking, guys. No one would ever try something so silly like that, right? Oh man, she's such a jokester. Let's see how she reacted to Tony Hinchcliffe's comedy set at a Trump rally.
And it was, of course, it was frustrating as a comedian where people are like, well, what kind of comedian are you when you're trying to censor other comics? I wasn't trying to censor that gentleman. That that was not a good set. If you bombed amongst the races with racist jokes that were hacky and they were, those are roast jokes that were probably said maybe 10, 15 years ago. A watermelon joke, bro, really? Come on now.
So just for optics sake alone, I'd agree that it probably wasn't the greatest idea to bring on a comedian known for roasting and edgy humor. But this whole fake outrage by the left is totally ridiculous. And of course, Ida, a comedian who makes a living off of getting offended and telling jokes about how racist everyone else is, will be the first to get offended by another comedian.
That Iowa poll that everybody's been talking about, that Cenk and I have been talking about, that I'm sure Ida has seen, that is from Lily White, Iowa, where none of these things matter directly to voters there. Yes, in a big picture way they do, but it's not their community. So if in Iowa, Harris is up 3 according to that poll, and none of what happened in Madison Square Garden is impacting that vote, none of what is happening with the sort of the otherisms that the Trump campaign is doing, that tells me more about the rest of the country than just Iowa. It means that where it matters, it's going to matter even more. And so it was a real turning point for this campaign, I think.
Iowa poll? Sorry, I never heard of it. Oh wait, yes I have, because it's the only thing the left has been talking about since it's been published. Man, it would be crazy if that poll ended up being really off. But there's no way that would actually happen because it was made by the great J. Ann Seltzer, and she's like the goat of polling.
And I always ask people, if you love Trump so much, would you let him be the teacher of your little girl's kindergarten class? Would you be okay with him being the teacher of your little 5-year-old kindergarten girl's class? And most of them have the look on their face where it's no, even if they're not willing to say it.
Yes, I would actually. Have you seen his family and his kids and how they've turned out? Out of all the things Hillary Clinton could say nice about Trump, this is what she had to say.
Look, I respect his children. His children are incredibly able and devoted, and I think that says a lot about Donald.
But let me guess, you'll say, oh, but he wasn't the one actually raising those kids. But you know what? It doesn't even matter to begin with, because what kind of point are you even trying to make? We're not electing Donald Trump to babysit some 5-year-olds. We're electing him to lead the country. That requires an entirely different type of person than someone teaching young kids.
Every election cycle we hear about the long lines, and we think long lines in cities are a good thing for Kamala Harris. But for the right wing, they're absolutely convinced that Trump is going to win. Mm-hmm. So if you go on X and you suggest that Trump's not going to win, it's not that they're like, oh, boo, we hate you. They think you're crazy.
Yeah.
They think it's the most obvious thing in the world that Trump is going to win.
Well, it turns out they're absolutely correct. But don't act like the left didn't have the same kind of conviction about Kamala Harris winning, especially after that Iowa poll. Because, oh boy, it got amped up to 11 on the delusional scale at that point. Let's hear what Cenk had to say about Joe Rogan endorsing Donald Trump.
So, but he gets captured by his audience partly, and he gets captured by the guests. The guests are like a steady stream of 80% right-wingers.
Yeah.
And he's constantly going, oh yeah, you're totally right, oh yeah. So in that milieu, if you will, it is.
I won't.
I hear you, and you shouldn't. It's not surprising that he went Trump. I guess it'll affect some votes, as Taylor Swift affected some votes, but it's misguided.
Yes, misguided. You see, I'm Cenk with my infinite wisdom, and I know that Joe Rogan should actually be supporting Kamala because he's only being misguided by those darn right-wingers. Newsflash, a lot of the center and center-left leaning people have abandoned the Democratic Party after seeing how far left they have gone with their views and ideologies. But it's him being misguided. Got it.
Joe Rogan's main thing that he does is sits at a table with people and is completely incapable of ascertaining that they don't know what they're talking about.
Really now? So then why was Kamala so scared to go on his show? In fact, demanding that he flew out to her and that the podcast could only be 45 minutes. Spout all the nonsense you want about Joe, but it's clear that her not going on a show was an obvious oversight by her campaign, and now the left is working overtime to slander Joe so they can save face for their candidate.
If you are impressed with Elon Musk, that is a massive indictment of who you are as a person. That is deeply, deeply embarrassing that at this late date, you would still think that Elon Musk knows at all what he's talking about, let alone is the great and powerful person that makes the powerful case for Donald Trump.
It's so amazing seeing the left flounder and throw a hissy fit over an incredibly successful person like Elon supporting Donald Trump. You know, maybe he's right. How dare Elon care about free speech and the right to bear arms, or the mass influx of illegal immigrants? I mean, how embarrassing is it to be defending the Constitution in the year 2024? Like, come on, you should be supporting us Democrats, where we love censorship and constantly trying to ban guns. All the while, we do absolutely nothing about illegal immigration.
But anyway, and look, to the populism thing, I don't think the word populism should be used anymore. I think it should be replaced by words that have actual meanings. Because if populism can be used to encapsulate both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, then it's not a helpful word, I don't think. Because
I think it is a helpful word.
I think Donald Trump's use of populism has almost nothing to do with Bernie Sanders.
Do these guys really still harp on about Bernie Sanders? And now he wants to get rid of the word populism because it could be used to describe Bernie and Trump? If you think a guy like Trump, who's the very first president to not have anything to do with the government or the military before running, isn't anti-establishment, then I don't know what dimension you're living in, because you obviously aren't operating within reality.
And I think the thing that happened to Joe Rogan is the thing that happened to Elon Musk. He was affected by the online anti-woke mind virus. His brain has been twisted by conspiracy theories about boxers in the Olympics and gender dysphoria and all that stuff. And so forget all that stuff about healthcare and immigration and all of those stances. I'm gonna go for the least qualified presidential candidate America has ever experienced.
Yes, because we totally want men boxing against women in the Olympics. That totally seems fair and not at all dangerous to actual women. And don't talk to me about least qualified. You want to talk about qualified? How about the candidate that didn't have to get a single vote to become the Democratic Party's nominee? Or how when she did have to run against other Democrats back in 2020, no one voted for her. Or how Biden picked her simply for the sake of DEI. Trump, on the other hand, had to at least garner support and receive actual votes from the American people to become a candidate. And on top of all that, Trump has already been the president. You literally can't get more qualified than that. And this so-called woke mind virus is exactly what drove people away from the Democratic Party and their insane progressive ideologies.
They think it's in reverse, obviously. We live in different realities, right? So in their reality, oh my God, the biggest issue in the country is whether 7 trans girls play in high school sports against biological girls. I mean, I don't know if there's 7 or 17 or 70, but it ain't a lot.
Yeah.
And that is not the biggest issue in America. That is literally the smallest issue in America. But if you go on Rogan's show, oh my God, it's 80% of the conversation.
Really, 80%? Do you even watch his show, or do you just see clips on the internet and assume that's all he's talking about? And they're right to be concerned about this. There's a reason why we have men and women divisions in sports. And it's unfair for women, especially young girls, to have to compete against men. If you can't comprehend that, then you, sir, have been infected by the woke mind virus.
We have to find a way to trick people into voting for us. And the best trick we ever had was abortion. We'd say, oh, they're murdering the children. Give us the tax cuts because they're murdering the children. That's the oldest trick in the book. It's literally chapter 3 of my book, Justice is Coming, called Why Republicans Suck.
This might be one of the most insane things I've heard uttered from someone unironically. Now, I'm not for a complete abortion ban, as I do believe the life of the mother should be accounted for when determining if an abortion is necessary. But claiming the right is being duped into voting for Republicans because they don't want babies killed? I mean, yeah, I'd prefer we not kill babies. That seems pretty logical. You don't even have to be a Christian to grasp that abortions, especially late-term ones, is 100% taking the life of a baby. And yes, I know there can be exceptions, such as the life of the mother, but what a wild take by Cenk, and it really shows how far down the rabbit hole the left has gone with their progressive ideologies. And abortion is a state-level issue now anyways, so how is that factoring into people wanting to vote for Trump?
The second thing they have, John, is Trump derangement syndrome. They think we have it. I think they have it in spades.
I agree.
So we say, hey, wait a minute. Kamala Harris has all these different problems. I don't think the Democrats are going to deliver. I don't think the Democrats mean well when they take donor money and serve the donors, et cetera. What part of that is Trump derangement syndrome? I'm being as realistic, practical, and critical of the Democrats as I could possibly be, right? And I'm deeply frustrated by the Democrats.
Okay, you can claim you don't have Trump derangement syndrome, which I find a little unbelievable, but let's just say you don't. If you can't comprehend that most of the left has Trump derangement syndrome, then you've had your eyes and ears closed for the past 8 years.
One final thing about the Rogan thing, and I have no doubt that every right winger will be like, they're so mad he endorsed. First of all, he can endorse whoever he wants. I'm going to criticize him for the things he says and does. He can endorse whoever he wants, and I didn't think there was ever a chance he was going to endorse Kamala Harris in the first place, so it's hardly a loss in that way.
Hardly a loss? I mean, just her not even going on the podcast was a massive loss for her. It speaks volumes to the people that Rogan wanted to have her on the show and get to know her as a person, and she was still unwilling to do it. What does that tell you about her? Meanwhile, she's willing to throw millions of dollars at celebrities to endorse her, but free publicity on the Rogan podcast, and all you have to do is show you're capable of having a conversation or at least appear like you're somewhat of a normal functioning person. But yeah, I guess that was a little too much to ask of her. But hey, it was her race to lose, not mine.
Cenk, did you see the, they polled all different communities in different countries in the EU about who they'd vote for? And Trump won, I believe, 2 or 3 states. Russia, he had the highest support, it was like 70% or something. Denmark was 96% for Harris.
That's
Finland,
hilarious.
That is, how is that possible? How is that possible? There aren't more like transphobes in Denmark or something, but.
They're countries, not states, but that doesn't surprise me one bit. They'd vote for Iraq if it meant more centralized government control. They also have completely different issues and concerns compared to the American people.
Georgie Girl says, just because Joe Rogan wears a sweatshirt on air doesn't mean he's part of the working class whom he thinks Trump will help. Look, and again, I don't have any derangement syndrome. There are issues in which I'm sure he's still good on. It just, you're going for literally the worst candidate that America has ever faced. You're choosing to, not just to vote for him. You chose to put your name and reputation on the line to support him.
Right, no derangement syndrome whatsoever.
Oh, he says, put Mike in the ring with Kamala. That would be interesting.
Okay, so that continues for a really long time at really low energy as he goes back to talking about the 2 women who transitioned. So then when a heckler in the crowd says, wouldn't it be funny if Iron Mike killed Kamala in the ring? He's like, yeah, that could happen.
How disingenuous can one person be? And I like how you're unknowingly defending that we should respect the division of men and women in combat sports. Yeah, Tyson would be in a different weight class than Kamala, obviously, but it's called a joke that of course the left once again cannot comprehend, or the most likely case is that they're willfully ignorant for the sake of their fake outrage at every word Trump utters from his mouth.
They're not pulling out of North Carolina. His advisors are worried about North Carolina. They've run out of money. They had $1 billion. What are you talking about? Hey, everybody in the audience, I'm gonna tell you a bunch of lies. You're gonna understandably, if you accept those lies, believe that there's no world that she could possibly win this election in. And you will be so shell-shocked if she does win that maybe you'll be willing to pick up a gun.
Let's see here. She raised $1 billion and still ended her campaign in debt. She lost North Carolina, and the ones that were shell-shocked were the people on the left. It appears the one spewing lies here is you. But we have finally reached the actual election night coverage.
Let's go! Election day on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys, live from the Poly Market Studios. All right, guys, we've got an hour of the show ahead for you guys, and then we're going to go straight into election coverage. In fact, the election coverage has begun because polls just closed in Indiana and Kentucky. Those 2 states will obviously have no effect on the election, but still, okay, because we live in this insane electoral college.
Okay, starting off pretty chipper. Let's see how long this lasts.
Their theory is, well, since there's so many less mail-in ballots this election cycle, especially in Pennsylvania, as opposed to 2020, that must mean that Donald Trump is going to win because he wins day of voting historically. So since not a lot of Democrats mailed it in, well, that's it. The Republicans are going to win. Except in 2020 there was COVID, and that's why the Democrats who were afraid to go outside did massive mail-in voting. Of course there was going to be less mail-in voting in Pennsylvania and everywhere else in this election. by Democrats and Republicans.
I mean, it turns out their theory was right. Kamala received significantly less votes than Biden, and the day of voting was dominated by Trump voters.
The polls are so close. Looking at the average of polls, yes, I get it. There's that Iowa poll, which is a bit of an outlier that shows Kamala Harris winning in Iowa. And I get that that pollster has a good reputation, but it's one poll and you can't put too much weight behind that.
Whoa, what? It took Anna to come on here to finally get some logical sense for once?
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz should have done infinitely more media and way more interviews. You know who would have been great on Joe Rogan? Tim Walz.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, so another story we have in the rundown, I hope we get to, Tim Walz interacting with Trump voters. Oh my God, it was gold. He was so good at it. Because he's the only one out of the four that's a real human being.
Tim, the most human? The most human thing about him is how much he lies. Like his constant stolen valor claims to make himself look cool.
So he seems like he's being genuine if you're not well versed in it. Kamala Harris is the worst of them in terms of acting. Donald Trump, no, actually, to be fair, Donald Trump is the worst actor. He can't act if his life depended on it because he'll just admit everything. He'd be like,
Whoops, Cenk accidentally got caught telling how he really feels about Kamala. That wasn't supposed to slip out until after she loses the election.
So let's see what happens on that front. Junk Rig Sailor says 2 words, watch Iowa. For sure, obviously we'll keep our eye on Iowa to see if that poll was right, because if the poll was right, that means Kamala Harris is gonna win in spectacular fashion.
This Iowa poll is the true winner of this election. I've never seen a poll like this get so much attention in my life, only to be so unbelievably and catastrophically wrong.
I think the Democrats, win or lose, have got to take a very hard look at themselves and ask how it could be that a significant majority of working class people in this country are prepared to vote for Donald Trump. And the truth is, what has got to happen is the Democrats have got to wake up and say, you know what? Instead of worrying about big money interests and campaign contributions from billionaires, we got to stand with the working class of this country. And we need an agenda that is a popular agenda that speaks to Democrats and Republicans. Caitlin, you go out there, you talk to Republicans and Democrats, and you say, do you think you're living in a democracy when billionaires are spending billions of dollars on the federal election? Is that really what a democracy is about? Or do we got to get big money out of politics?
I 100% agree with Sanders's critique of the Democratic Party and the issue of taking big money and not representing the best interests of your base and your voters. But I also want to make a point about how, there's the fake unity message that we get time and time again from corporate Democrats who don't really want to unify the country. It's never about the actual policies or actual reforms that voters on both sides of the political aisle want. It's usually about, we need to, DEI unity into existence, but that's not the way it works.
Dude, what? When did Anna become so based? She's spot on here.
Kamala Harris sent me, her team and the different PACs have sent me about 20 texts today. Give me money, give me money, give me money, okay? You already raised $1 billion. And so those little things, at least I'm grassroots, that's okay. But when you go and you say you're still trying to get more donor money with a week left, no, turn and go and get voters. Get voters.
Oh, this is glorious. I had no idea her campaign was still begging for money on the day of the election. Imagine raising $1 billion just to lose in dramatic fashion while also being in debt by the end of it and still needing to beg for money.
NBC News did an analysis in regard to outside money pouring into the campaign coffers of both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, the numbers are a little skewed because it includes the money that poured in to Biden's campaign as well. But here's what they found. They found that outside spending surpassed $1 billion in this presidential race. And if you break it down further, it appears that Kamala Harris has received $464 million in these outside bribes. Donald Trump has received $75 million.
Huh, isn't that interesting? Really makes you think who's actually for the people and who's just there to appease to their donors.
What's left on the map is Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Nevada. So in my opinion, those are the 3 closest races and the 3 most important races. So again, if Trump wins Michigan and Wisconsin, this thing is way over. right? He'll landslide. Not really landslide. There's no such thing as a landslide, but within the swing states, right?
Yeah, watch what words you use here, Cenk, because winning every swing state, some could claim as a landslide. And we definitely wouldn't want that to happen, especially if Trump were to somehow do something like that.
Usually look at likely voters. And when Bernie Sanders won the Michigan primary in 2016, he was supposed to lose by 18, but he won by 2. And that was the biggest case of the polls being wrong, maybe in my lifetime.
J.N. Seltzer's watching this right now saying, hold my beer.
So some of the outlier polls are Trump polls, Trafalgar, Atlas, nonsense. So all they're trying to do is get the polling average to show Trump is the winner so they can cry later. It's absurd. It's so silly. Real Clear Politics shouldn't have that in there. It's total nonsense. And if I see an outlier on the Democratic side, I would do the same. But
oh, really now? So about that Iowa poll, you know, the one that the entire left have been talking about for days now? You know, the one that's a huge outlier that's democratically favored? Yeah, that one. I'm still waiting for you to dismiss that one.
Well, there was a lot of excitement over what I think is an outlier poll, and that was the, was it Seltzer poll?
That's the Iowa poll.
Yeah, the Iowa poll. So do you see that as an outlier, or do you think that's?
No, not necessarily, but then, so she did something interesting, and that's a really good question, because she has a poll that's usually very reliable. She got one election wrong, but her track record is really good in getting almost all the elections right, and usually within a point or two. So she's one of the more reliable pollsters.
Dude, what is going on? How is Anna so based right now calling Cenk out for not dismissing the Iowa poll and exposing his own double standards?
In North Carolina, Harris is at 68% of the vote, which is only 2% of the total. But you know, that could be an indicative 2%, so that's something.
It's my favorite part of election coverage.
When
there's 3% of the precincts reporting. And
fictional momentum, I think, is the best kind of momentum, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, that seemed to be the trend from the Democrats from this election. Just look at Kamala Harris's campaign. It was conceived off of fictional momentum, so I can see why he loves it so much.
Especially in the last 5 days, Trump butchered this election. Like, that's why I was telling John in the Damage Report earlier this morning that, like, I have a theory that he was almost subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously almost trying to throw the election. I mean, every crazy thing he could say, he said at the end, and that was driving away voters in big droves.
Really? Dang, if Cenk is right, then Trump could have not just won every single swing state, but maybe even states like Virginia or like Minnesota, if he was actually trying.
They got to Lehigh. And because it's a college campus, there aren't that many voting booths. Why? Especially in states controlled by Republican legislatures, they make sure there are less voting booths in Democratic areas. So that's why you'll see a line, and he sent me the video. I mean, it's all the way down the street. You're waiting hours and hours and hours. It shouldn't be like that. But you almost never see them in Republican areas. They go in, because they have all the voting booths in the world. In all the giant long lines, have you ever seen one in, I know it's cities versus rural areas, so it's not likely to see it in rural areas.
I love how he refutes himself, revealing that the long lines from prominent Democrat areas versus nearly no long lines for prominent Republican areas is because it's city versus rural. And which parties do you think dominate each of those areas?
Yeah, but Trump has won Florida, which is unfortunate after all they went through during the pandemic, that they'd want him in charge once again, but that's what they're deciding to do. By the way, we do have, as of right now, 37% of Georgia's results in, and Trump right now is up 57-43. And maybe for this discussion, I should also point out that we don't have all of the Florida results, but it does look like Trump might be outperforming the final Florida polling that I saw by a bit.
That is troubling.
Uh-oh, first signs of panic.
Michael, what do you got for us?
Hi guys, how are you? Good to be on again with all of you from here. Yeah, the Florida amendments are what made me think earlier that Florida might be in play and be called later in the evening. That was my only bold prediction tonight, a bold prediction that has since gone down.
Oh, don't worry, Michael. The night is still young to have your other predictions wrong.
Cool guy wrote in, Anna got hotter when she became a conservative. Here for the meltdown. Hilarious.
I'm not conservative.
She's not conservative, and I think she looks the same, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, a bit of a glow up. I mean, I'm kidding. I do look the same.
Okay.
You know, that guy's comment might be onto something.
Right now, I'm getting a vibe that is not good. That is not good. So let's keep going here. See if we can fish for more either positive or negative news.
So in Pennsylvania right now, we have an even smaller share of the vote, only 13% in. Harris is up 67-32, which I imagine is how this will probably end up. I'm kidding, obviously. So we don't know. Now, as I said, I've been spending my time comparing individual counties, some of which have 20% in, some have 70% in, to how Biden ended up. But the general nationwide issue that we're talking about not knowing what percentage are mail-in and which are day of, also extends to what I'm doing in the individual counties. So I have found that she is up over Biden's result in basically all of these counties.
Ooh, that's good.
But again, that might be the mirage that we're talking about.
Oh no, not the blue mirage. Anything but the blue mirage.
Look, even if you squeak out a victory in the blue wall, I know Democrats, they'll learn no lesson at all. In fact, they'll learn the opposite lesson. They'll be like, nailed it. Our answer going forward is more Cheneys. And Kamala Harris will almost certainly put Liz Cheney in the cabinet, and they'll celebrate and think that they're the champions of the world. If you think Donald Trump tried to destroy democracy, and you're in the Democratic leadership, and you barely beat him, that is not like something to go right home about and brag about.
I'll do you one even better. They'll lose all the blue wall swing states and still not learn a thing from this election.
I'm coming to conclusions. Let's go to Georgia first.
Okay, Georgia first. Both are still quite tight. I mean, he's up by 5 points in Georgia. We've still got a quarter of the vote to come in. It is leaning towards him. We've been going county to county. He's up in some, she's up in others. We don't know until the final votes come in. But he is definitely, look, if you had to put money on these two states, you would assume that he would win both of these states at this point.
Yeah, no, North Carolina is less clear. I want to go to that next. Georgia, I'm almost done with.
I wouldn't be done with Georgia.
But he's got a 5-point lead with only a quarter left.
A quarter, but you don't know where those votes come from.
Oh, here we go. Let me guess, Michael. If she can get 90% of the rest of the votes, then she can still win.
It's not about 100%. It's about where those votes are. There's suburban and exurban counties in Georgia that they're waiting on. Looking, for example, at North Carolina, Donald Trump's up 3% right now. Does it look good for the Democrat? Does it look good for Kamala Harris? No. But you go to Charlotte, which is Mecklenburg County, 3-2 Democratic County, or 2-1 really, almost 2-1, and 10% of the vote is in there, and that is a heavy population county. But we were talking earlier about Wake County, about Durham County, and about Orange County. Well, a lot of those votes are in the triangle, and Kamala Harris has a 22% left of Wake County, which is also a 2-1 county. But she's going to have to get a better share of those in order to win that state.
Okay, so she needs to outperform her current numbers that most likely already have all the early votes tallied. Yeah, I don't think she's winning those states.
North Carolina is critical because if Kamala Harris loses Pennsylvania, she has to win North Carolina and Nevada. So if she loses North Carolina, then there is no backup plan to Pennsylvania. And that means Pennsylvania becomes a must win.
We're nearly there, the point where the Dems realize that they need Pennsylvania, otherwise all hope is lost.
Except you look at Iowa right now. That was where we've talked about this highly touted Seltzer poll. Very small percentage of the vote in. Harris is up by 13% there, but a small percentage of the vote. But these are the things you have to look for on election night. There are going to be some surprises. There always are. And
wait a minute, I almost completely forgot about this highly touted Iowa poll. I hadn't heard it mentioned in nearly 5 minutes. So she can still win then, right? Because that Iowa poll means she's going to win that state easy, so then everything else should fall in place for her, right?
So Dan, you're generally a conservative, so how are you feeling about tonight's results so far?
It's too early to even have an opinion on it, in my opinion.
Thanks, Dan. Really riveting stuff there. Don't get too carried away on those opinions of yours.
Honestly, as soon as these individuals get elected into office, they don't carry out their promises. They look out for themselves. I mean, when you look at Congress overall and the way some of these members of Congress come in as regular working class people, and then they leave tremendously wealthy. Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're able to do insider trading with absolutely no consequences. They're doing it for themselves. They are enriching themselves. And you have Democrats and Republicans doing this. And it's incredibly frustrating. It's blackpilling to see these so-called public servants not really serving the people.
Wow. Anna just cannot miss tonight. She's surrounded by buffoons, but still manages to keep a level head with some actual good takes.
Part of the appeal of Donald Trump is, I used to think this was impossible, but I guess Trump proved me wrong. The idea of a single individual totally changing an entire political party, but Trump has managed to do that, right? The neocons of the Bush administration are no longer popular among the Republican electorate.
And once again, Anna is absolutely right. Come on, Anna, I can't keep agreeing with you all night here.
Back in 2016 and even still today, is the candidate that people support because they're so angry at our political system. They feel that they've been left behind. And so it's almost like voting for Trump is the middle finger to the establishment, is a middle finger to the politicians that they feel have left them behind. And so
and
it's
to
like
the libs. I mean, it's an own the libs part of it.
Yeah, that's true as well. But I think it goes even beyond that because they don't just talk about the libs, they also talk about the rhinos, right? They're unhappy with how our politics has worked out for them. And Donald Trump angers everybody, right? I don't think that they see Republican politicians' secret hatred for Trump as a loss. They see that as a win.
I'm speechless. Someone that actually gets it on the left. I haven't tuned into the Young Turks a lot recently, but has Anna always been this based?
Let's go to North Carolina right away.
Okay.
I want to go to results.
Yeah, so we're still waiting for just about 1/4 of the vote to come in, but at 76%, he is up by now 7 points. And so that is looking less and less likely to flip at this point. I would say very unlikely.
In fact, Decision Desk has already called it. So
not the New York Times.
Uh-oh, but wait. We should really hear from Michael first about this. He might be able to find a few blue counties that if she gets like 100% of the votes, then maybe she can still win. We can't just give up on North Carolina like this because then that means.
So that puts us in a very perilous spot. So if you do the math, Arizona and Nevada are not enough. She's got to win the entire blue wall. Without North Carolina, and Georgia doesn't look overly likely either. We'll go there right now.
Let me just tell you a little bit just briefly about North Carolina right now. Wake County is at 80%. That's Raleigh. That's a big population center in the Triangle. Mecklenburg County, which is where Charlotte is, a big city of Charlotte, 17% counted. That's why some of the bigger outfits are waiting to call this race.
Oh, thank you, Michael. We still have hope. She can still do this, guys.
What percentage is reporting in North Carolina?
76.
76% reporting you're down by 7. You're in a world of trouble. You're like, yes, it matters which counties, but you're still in a world of trouble. And so much trouble that one of the organizations has already called it.
Okay, but we're far from panic mode, right? Wait, that Iowa poll. Don't you guys remember that one Iowa poll? Let's imagine if she actually won Iowa here for a second.
By the way, Iowa has been called by CNN at least for Trump.
Iowa called for Trump, so there goes that nonsense.
Oh, now it's nonsense. When before you were saying it wasn't an outlier and that we shouldn't dismiss it.
I'm getting revved up here on a significant rant. So, because Kamala Harris is not winning, and the people who thought that Kamala Harris was going to win in a landslide are totally wrong.
There weren't a ton of people who thought that. I mean,
almost every Democrat I talked to thought that.
Well, I
didn't see a lot of that.
I said the blue wall is going to go to Harris, and may be wrong about that. But honestly, I don't think that there were a lot of people. There were people who said if it's a landslide, they would predict that it was a Harris landslide, not a Trump landslide, which is different than saying they were predicting it's a landslide.
No, Cenk is right here. Many on the left actually believe that Kamala Harris could have a landslide victory, especially in the days leading up to the election. They had propaganda like the bottom has fallen out of the Trump campaign, or that his campaign is on a downward spiral, or Trump is throwing the election, or how the polls are showing that Harris is going to have a historic turnout. Yada, yada, yada. All BS pushed by the left to fabricate momentum.
I'm getting revved up. Let's go to the blue states.
Both Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan are very tight. Wisconsin and Michigan are tighter than Pennsylvania.
So Pennsylvania, he's got a 3-point lead. Again, if he wins Pennsylvania, good night, Irene. This election's over.
Yes, very true. But Cenk, you really should be double checking with Michael first before making such a bold statement. Like maybe Michael can find a way she can win some of the states the media sites have already called for Trump. Like, is that possible?
All right, Farron, what do you make of all this right now?
You know, we all knew this was going to be a tight race, and I do think it ended up actually being tighter so far than what a lot of people thought. You know, I don't want to say it's reminiscent of 2016, but wow, it feels reminiscent of 2016 with everybody going in maybe with a little too much optimism.
Everybody? Or do you just mean the people on the left? Because the right have a lot to be optimistic about right now.
I saw a little bit ago Michael talking about all these people with the fantasies of Texas is going to turn blue. All these liberal, you know, magazines and outlets, they're like, this is the year that Texas is totally turning blue. I've been reading those articles since 2004. Florida, obviously, there were a lot of people for some reason that still thought that Florida, maybe it's in play. Maybe we can get rid of Rick Scott.
Yeah, this is just more left-wing media propaganda and delusions that the left loves to fantasize about. And they live in such echo chambers that they end up starting to believe this nonsense.
85-15, Donald Trump, they think, is more likely to win. And now it's up 27,000 votes. Okay.
Surely scientific, Paul.
No, of course it's not scientific, of course. No, what that shows you is the sentiment of the people watching.
Of course Michael has to chime in, because you just know it irks him so much to see even their own fans know that Trump has won at this point, or at the very least is very heavily favored.
But guys, this is definitely not a call. But if you made me guess right now who's gonna win, Trump.
And there it is. Reality has started to set in, for Cenk at least.
And I've been 50-50 the entire day, the entire night. I am no longer 50-50. I think Trump has at least a 75% chance of winning at this point. So
I don't know where you get that, but okay.
Michael once again needing to chime in with his, well, actually, it's more like only 74%, and here's why.
I'm getting it from my experience in covering elections.
I know.
So you're losing. So you're barely winning in Virginia. You're losing in all of your blue wall states. And yes, you can come back. But look at the trend, Michael. I mean, if it was like spotty, okay, you say
this
spotty.
is where we were in 2020. We knew it was going to be a close election. You were right
weren't.
This morning. Yeah, it basically is where we were. There's no state that has been called for the Republican that at this point that it wasn't called for the Republican last time.
Michael just can't come to even admit that Trump is favored at this point. He actually believes it's still 50-50 because he's holding out hope for that infamous overnight dump of votes like in 2020. But that ain't happening this time around because those early votes have mostly already been counted.
So let's acknowledge Seltzer, not full of crap. She's been terrific on in other polls, but Seltzer was wrong about Iowa. So that big giant
we don't know where it's going to finish. There was a margin of error.
Well, she's not going to win by 3.
No.
That's what Seltzer said, and Iowa got called right away. Not right away, but got called, in good order.
Michael providing endless amounts of delusion tonight, I see. The Iowa poll turns out to be wildly inaccurate, and he says, well, there was a margin of error. Dude, she ended up being wrong by over 16 percentage points. If that's your margin of error, then these polls really are meaningless and just a tool to manufacture momentum. The guy can't stand that his warped view of reality pre-election has now come crashing down on him all at once.
Obviously, the Democrats have at least performed worse than they expected. So what is your sense of why?
I do think they were not aggressive enough in ads. I've seen the people that have said, because Fox News talked about this a lot this evening, oh, well, she didn't do enough interviews. Well, I don't care that she didn't do interviews. That doesn't bother me.
What? That's what you can come up with for why the Democrats are underperforming? With her $1 billion, she didn't spread enough propaganda with her ads? It's totally not from her messaging and political views. She just needed more ads. And despite her on the brink of losing, you don't even think she needed to do more interviews? We barely even got to see her speak without reading off a teleprompter or regurgitating a script. The American people never even got a chance to see who she is as a person. In the limited times we did, it didn't look that great. I mean, she's great at reading off a teleprompter, but we've already had a political puppet running the office for 4 years. We don't need another 4 years of that.
Look, I think there was an opportunity for the right, if Trump were to lose, to potentially find an identity that was not just tied into Donald Trump. But now, if he does win, then again, they are going to have to be 100% deferential to him. If you stick your head up, your head will be chopped off. You're not gonna be able to criticize him.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because that's exactly what the left has been doing with Kamala ever since she got nominated to be the presidential nominee. The left would criticize her for being a bad vice president or how she just would completely disappear for months on end. But once she became the nominee, she became the greatest thing since sliced bread, and she could do no wrong. With some even claiming she was the perfect candidate running the perfect campaign. Let's take a quick look back in time to see how they used to talk about Kamala Harris.
A new report in the New York Times indicates that Kamala Harris's closest allies have pretty much given up on her as vice president. Said she had not risen to the challenge of proving herself as a future leader of the party, much less the country. Even some Democrats, whom her own advisors referred reporters to for supportive quotes, confided privately that they had lost hope in her.
Wow, you know, if the New York Times is reporting on you badly and you're a Democrat, then you're really failing at your job. But I mean, at least she can do public speaking and just say the easy things that the Democrats need her to say, right?
Kamala Harris really does seem to struggle with everything right now, including public speaking engagements, explaining what the Biden administration stands for. I mean, you keep seeing these instances play out over and over again to the point where her closest allies are now pretty much abandoning her, especially in the context of this New York Times story and the interviews they conducted with them.
Okay, well, even if she's not the best at that, she at least has the president's full support, right?
Biden has an upcoming book titled The Fight of His Life, and Joe Biden refers to Kamala Harris as a work in progress.
No, they have a bad relationship. There's no question about that.
So
okay, well, I mean, that's fine. She at least gets the job done, though. Like how she solved illegal immigration, you know, the one issue that Joe Biden assigned her to. Right?
Now, according to the New York Times, Harris chose to avoid the media for an entire year after the disastrous interview you're about to watch, in which she could not answer whether or not she had been to the border. So here's that moment.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, you know, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Okay, I'm running out of defenses here for her, guys. Wait, no, actually, you know, this is actually just all sexism and racism anyways. She was never gonna succeed when she had to deal with struggles like this.
Now, but at the same time, her supporters can't help themselves. They always make arguments about racism and sexism and historic this and historic that, whether it makes sense or not. Like one of her former staffers is like, you know, she's 5'2". And all the chairs, they're made for white males. He didn't say white. He didn't say white, to be fair. But they're made for ex-vice presidents who are male and they're taller. Dude, don't complain about that. That's insane, okay? Then you look stupid and petty.
Okay, I think you get the point. The left did not like her, including the people close to her. But once she became the nominee, then boom, complete 180. And now she's the greatest thing ever and can do no wrong. But let's get back into election night because we have a meltdown to get to.
I want to go back to the numbers, but I'd say one last quick thing
Also,
about that.
I just want to say, nobody's won this race yet. It's not.
No, I know. That's why I'm going back to the numbers in a second. In fact,
perfect. We jump right back into Michael rejecting reality.
Okay, North Carolina's gone. That is an enormous moment in this election. Enormous.
But it's a state that the Democrats thought that they had a great deal of hope in this election, and they came closer than they have in a while.
Come closer than they have in a while? She ended up losing North Carolina by over 3%. Biden in just 2020 came within just over 1% to beating Trump in North Carolina. So what are you even talking about? She didn't even match what Biden did just 4 years ago.
I'm getting in a angrier mood as the night goes on, which is unsurprising. I don't think Senator Sherrod Brown did much for all of his talk.
Yes, Cenk, let the anger consume you. We need the meltdown.
There's almost no honest Democratic politicians other than Bernie.
Wait, is Cenk turning based before our very eyes? Or is it now that he knows that Kamala is about to lose, he can actually say how he really feels?
What do you think went wrong in the Kamala Harris Democratic campaign against Trump here?
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, I thought she ran a pretty good campaign, but I don't know that she was her strongest candidate. There's still probably a little antipathy towards a woman being president. And there's probably still some racial antipathy.
Well, she obviously wasn't the strongest candidate, but your party didn't even require her to receive any votes to become the Democratic nominee, so you have no one else to blame but yourselves. And of course, it all comes back to sexism or racism. The left will truly not learn a thing from this election when they have the scapegoats of, oh, it's just because she's a minority, and definitely not anything about her policies or views or her as a person.
Yeah, I gotta say, I totally disagree. Barack Obama, after he won, after his inauguration, was at an 83% approval rating. And so that there was a black guy with the name Barack Hussein Obama sitting at an 83% approval in the country.
You know you're a Democrat with immense delusion if even Cenk is calling you out for your absurd reasoning for why she lost.
The main problem is that Democrats take donor money and deliver for their donors and not for their voters. And I don't think that the Democrats get it at all. I think they're gonna go kiss more donor.
Dang, Cenk is starting to sound like Anna all of a sudden now that Kamala lost.
They're gonna leave their voters behind, and like you said, they're gonna whine. And so, does anybody in Congress understand how much the country hates the establishment and how the Democratic Party looks like they're the establishment? It also matters how you talk about things. I'm gonna get those some Wall Street guys. They're gonna take all of our homes and they're gonna turn us into renters and they're gonna make us work for them the whole time. Now, if you tell a Democrat that, they go, no, that's so uncivil. Don't do that, please. No, that's so uncivil, right? You know what that resonates with? The average American who didn't go to Yale with you, okay? And who isn't planning to be a lobbyist afterwards, and who doesn't have nothing but banker friends. The average American wants you to be pissed because they're pissed because they can't afford houses anymore.
He's absolutely right. It was clear as day to see that she was bought and paid for by the donors and not actually running for actual Americans that are struggling right now. There's a reason why she managed to raise over $1 billion in such a short time span. And it's not because the everyday people were donating to her.
What did Steve Cohen say today? I mean, look, I like the brother because he's honest, but Congressman Cohen came on here and said, we need to raise more money. Oh, come on, Jesus Christ. And he blamed the American electorate, but it's not his fault. He's actually one of the most honest guys in Congress. You raised $1 billion, where the F is our victory?
Yeah, come on guys, we just needed another billion and maybe we could have won. Democrats just love to throw money at a problem without actually finding the root cause of the issue. And that's exactly what they're doing when making up excuses for why they lost this election.
These Democratic leaders are simpletons. They're servants of the donor class. So they go in there like, oh, donor, give me money, please. And I made an ad. I'm Kamala Harris, I'm full of joy. Okay, well, what did that get you? And they say, oh, Jake, you're too angry. Too angry? What? You think, does Donald Trump look like he's kind? Does he look like he's in a good mood? I mean, no, people want some sort of reaction from their politicians. They want them to represent them, to fight for them.
What do you mean, Cenk? Are you telling me this canned line by Kamala that she yelled at almost all her rallies wasn't enough to convince you?
Should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never again. Should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
I have no interest in listening to a single Democratic politician ever again. They can go kiss my ass, they can do whatever they want, and we never listen to them anyway, and they hate us because we're right and they're wrong. They're always wrong, and they hate us for being right, okay? So, but they're not gonna learn. You have to beat them in a primary, that's your only hope.
Oh, a primary. What a novel idea. That way you would at least know your candidate garnered the most support, at least within your own party. You know, unlike Kamala, who just got anointed the nominee without ever needing to run against any other Democrat. Because we all know how that turned out back in 2020.
These Democratic leaders are the most useless people on earth. If they're not all fired, the Democratic Party is out of its mind.
Oh, Cenk, you think too highly of the Democratic Party. To think they would actually take any kind of accountability whatsoever is hilarious. And to actually fire them, yeah, that definitely won't happen. They'll just continue to blame racism or sexism or not enough money or apathy or voter suppression or gerrymandering or the Electoral College. The list is endless before they start taking a shred of accountability.
So the next time that some son of a bitch on MSNBC or in the Democratic Party tells you, oh no, be a good boy and girl, be civil, and vote for Democratic leaders, they know what they're doing. Those are the same goddamn liars that told you that Joe Biden was totally fine, that he was young and he was dynamic behind the scenes, and it wasn't a problem at all.
Yeah, I love how quickly the left were to sweep this one under the rug. They were all staunchly defending Biden and his health for years when any person who wasn't a complete sheep to the mainstream media or the Democratic Party could easily see he was not all there. Literally days before his disastrous debate, they were still trying to lead you to believe he was as sharp as a tack.
I've said it for years now. He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
I don't know how anyone could still watch this guy after he said this, other than to laugh at his absurdity. If you still watch him and believe a word he says, then you're beyond hope. You are willfully being misled by these talking heads. They aren't unbiased. They don't give you the facts. They only tell you what you want to hear or what they want you to hear, only telling you one side of the story or taking clips out of context to smear people like Trump, or just flat out lying to you like he does here.
They've been lying to you the whole time. If you're on the left, you're a Democratic voter. Wakey, wakey. I need to wake you up out of the hypnosis that you're in, that Morning Joe and The View and all of mainstream media has put you in. They're lying to you. Why do you think they keep losing? Do you think they keep telling you how smart they are and how they're going to deliver you victories? And all they ever do is deliver loss after loss after loss.
I wish it was that easy, Cenk, but these people don't want to be woken up. They enjoy being led astray. It makes them feel good about themselves when they hear about the other side and how they're all just Nazis and racists. It makes them feel smarter or morally superior, and they don't really care if it's the truth or not.
So Democratic voters, snap out of it. These guys are obvious liars. Fire them all. Fire them all!
This is the meltdown rant we've all been waiting for. And oh man, was it glorious. Cenk made a lot of great points, and I'd love to see the Democratic Party take accountability and rethink their motives and ideologies. But we all know that won't happen. Unless they get a candidate like Trump on their side to completely shake up the party.
NBC News, ABC News, and CNN have all called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This election is over. We're going to have 4 years of anarchy and chaos. I cannot imagine a world, a scenario where Donald Trump does a good job and a Republican gets elected in 2028. Someone will beat the Republicans in 2028 because of how badly Donald Trump is going to break this country.
The way he just got done ranting about Kamala and now is ranting about Trump, this election seemed like a lose-lose for him. But I'm curious if he'd be saying these things about Kamala if she ended up winning the election, and if he'd just fall in line to praise her like the rest of the left had. And what you see as breaking the country, the right sees as restoring it, because the country has already been in disarray thanks to the left running the show for so long. But I am eager to see where both parties are at come the 2028 election.
And I guarantee you after this election, do you think that Kamala Harris and the rest are going to learn their lesson? There's no chance of that. Instead, they will blame their voters first. They'll talk about, oh, the Arabs and the Muslims, they were the problems in Michigan. They'll talk about young black men didn't turn out. Oh, women should have turned out more. Oh, we Latinos, how dare they go with a racist Donald Trump? And then they'll say, oh, the country's too racist, the country's too sexist.
100%.
In fact, we had a Democratic congressman on today who said those very same things.
Yep, it's exactly what they've been doing. It's always the country's fault. And then they wonder why they've lost so much support over the past decade from moderates.
I'm so sick of the refusal to do any self-reflection at all and to lash out as if the electorate, like the onus is on the electorate to get them elected. Like they're entitled to the voters working for them. And it's like, no. running to be a public servant. They have forgotten that, Cenk.
No, absolutely.
And so they're just totally disconnected. They're disconnected from average, everyday Americans. And that's why I think the Democratic Party has been bleeding support from, marginalized communities that, the Democrats purport to be the representatives of.
Anna has been on point all night, and she is again here. That's totally how the Democrats view their voters. But the sad part is, it still almost worked because you have a massive base that still believe in vote blue no matter who. They'll probably look at this election as just a narrow loss so they can claim that very little needs to be changed within the party. And what really needs to be done is just more money or more ads, more propaganda, more corporate backing, more corrupt politicians, anything but actual change to capture the everyday American. They gave a middle finger to the former middle class and the hardworking everyday American person. And they responded with a middle finger right back at them with their vote for Trump. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.
Eventually, they'll just lose to like an actual literal baboon. And they'll be like, I don't know. I raised $2 billion from the donors. I didn't do anything at all, but I raised so much money. I don't know how the baboon beat us 4 times.